What's up, everybody? It's Fiona here, and today we're going to do something a little different with the Siege video. I'm going to have my Siege hits from the December 30th Siege in the background. We pulled two lower ranked G3 guilds, so we're doing a bit of cleaving. It's the funny hits too, because I had a lot of actual cleave traps that I hit into that either AI went bad or I got lucky and we still won, which made for some entertainment. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about Siege and kind of the current state of the game. So I'm going to talk about the recent Siege tournament that Malevolent won for our second time, the meta that we saw throughout the season, and I'm also going to talk about the Siege regular season, which I think is kind of interesting and contributes to the lack of me really wanting to put out content. So talk first about Siege Tourney. It was really interesting this year around, or this season around, in that we got really lucky in final matchmaking. So, for those of you who don't know, there's three really competitive guilds in Global Siege right now. There's Malevolent, the guild that I'm in, and then there's Skyfall and Mithril. And typically, you will see one of these guilds fight in the second to last round of the tourney, and then two out of the three in the finals. And coming into last season, Skyfall was the first seed by far, so it was very likely that they were going to get that lucky not having to fight one of the other top two guilds until the finals slot. But SF and Mithril actually got each other in the very last siege of the season, and somehow Mithril forced them third place, which allowed us to sneak past them, take first for the season, and we got the really easy bracket, and where we didn't have to play against Mithril because they lost to Skyfall in the semis, and we only had to fight Skyfall for another really top guild in the whole tournament. Um, and then some interesting things that happened during tourney itself. Skyfall versus Mithril in the semifinals was really interesting match. Skyfall actually brought out an old defense with the Sierra Jogue and Theomars. This is actually kind of a thing that happens quite often. A lot of people, they're like racking their brains and looking at bounce patch to think of what are the new units that just got changed in order to come up with something new. And there's often a lot of surprises where people put in new combinations. Either like an offense monster gets nerfed that helped beat a defense that was really popular in the past, or there's just something that was overlooked. So Sierra Jogue and Theomars was a really old defense. I want to say the first time that I saw it really prevalently was back when YRNG was like a top 8 guild, and they ran it many seasons ago. I want to say years ago. And I'm sure other people have run it since, and it's been around. But it's one of those defenses that in regular season, it doesn't really have a good swift threat. So a lot of people cleave it, a lot of people Lucian it, a lot of people praline it, etc. But in a tournament setting where you're willing to kind of go to more extreme lengths to trap cleaves, and you're okay, like getting a 90% win rate on offense is not good enough, and getting 10% win rate on defense is really good. It ends up being much more interesting. There was also a couple of small buffs over the last couple of patches. There was the Sierra change a while ago that gave her the Absorb, which helps the defense cycle a little bit more on the skill 3. And then Theomar's got a couple of buffs where he gets the attack buff with the Endure now, and then he also gets the attack bar boost when you proc the Endure as well. I don't really think those things contribute a ton to this defense. I think it's just something that people haven't seen in a while and was never fully solved. And when people did see it, they just cleaved it, so they didn't respect it. So it was kind of interesting to see Skyfall bring that out. It seemed at first like a little bit of a disrespect, but it got a lot of wins, so good for them. And then when we look at Skyfall versus Malevolent, the finals, if anyone watched it, there was something really interesting in that typically in tournament matches, you see repeated defenses. So you'll see a 4-star that's pretty ubiquitous, one defense that's used all the time. And then you see usually a one elemental spam of 5-star defense, so something that is fairly replicable and doesn't need LD5s. And then you might see like a tower or two of defenses with like Sylvia's or other meta LD5s in it. And the idea there is that over the course of a 1v1, if you have to fight the same two defenses over and over again, you might have a premium option, say like an offense with Camilla that makes it really safe. But if you only have one Camilla or two Camillas, once you hit it once or twice, you run out of those premium options. You have to dig deep and think about something else to hit it with. So that's really typical meta in the season, but it's more impactful in the 1v1 setting because you don't have a second guild that you can hit to give some variety to your hits. And something that was really interesting is that, first of all, from Malevolent, we had a lot of LDs. So we actually almost exclusively ran Sylvia and Laura Towers. Those were the main shuffles we saw through. There wasn't as much, core elemental spam, which a lot of guilds are not prepared for on our way through before we played against Skyfall. And then Skyfall, they rotated their 4-star every single rotation. So every time we saw the 4-stars come up, it was completely new defense. And I don't think they repeated anything meaningful at all. There was like 15 defenses that we saw from them, which was crazy. This is actually something that I've been a really big fan of. I think that the concept of running out of options or running out of premium options is somewhat dead in today's Siege meta. There's a lot of accounts in top end Siege that have 5+ of multiple Siege dupes. I've seen accounts with 10 Adrianas, 10 Leos, which is just absolutely crazy. And the other thing is that, if you have something novel, something new that you're bringing out in Siege Finals, when you bring it out, it might get a lot of wins at the beginning because people haven't solved it, but typically you see one or two or maybe more of the really theory crafted minded guild members go off in a corner and they say, okay, here's the 4-star defense we're seeing, here's the 5-star defense we're seeing, what's the best offense? How are we going to practice, come up with something that's going to be really good into this? And an hour goes by and they figure something out that's better than what they were hitting it with at first. So if you're rotating the defenses, then there's this sense of like being prepared for the tower as they come up, gives you both a element of pacing to your fight. Like they have to take a little bit longer to take the tower because they don't know what's coming. And also somewhat putting the other guild out of practice, so they're hitting new things each time. They don't know exactly what monsters to have ruined, or they haven't like necessarily practiced into it. So I think it's very interesting. I've seen other guilds do this to a lesser degree, and I think it's interesting. But doing it every single time, man, that's a lot of work, and I think it's going to burn people out. But kudos to them. It was interesting. Not all the defenses were things that we thought were tournament worthy, that were like great defenses. But then again, that wasn't the point, right? Like if you're playing 10 defenses, then you obviously aren't putting forth the best one defense because there's so many things. The other things that we saw in Tourney that I thought were just like worth talking about is that Global loves chilling on defense, and I think it's so interesting because it's basically an unraceable unit. If you have a Swift chilling, really the only way to race it is another Swift chilling, and there are so many guilds that they'll see a 4-star and they'll just give up on bruisering it. If it seems like it can be anti-bruiserable, and they'll start sending cleaves halfway through a siege, and that's where if you swap, chillings to Swift, you'll just rack up a lot of wins. Or you'll just put Swift stuff on open, and people won't think that it's going to be Swift, and they'll lose into it. But we didn't really see this as much in other metas outside of global. I think bruising chilling is not as scary as people think it is, but it does allow you to build these defenses in such a way where in a tourney setting people aren't going to be racing it likely, just because it's impossible to race. And then also we saw a lot of the new 2As, the new Harpoos. So that was really cool. I think I actually saw everything except for the wind one in some sort of like round 3 and onward. And then I'll wrap this up talking a little bit about regular season Siege. So been playing Siege for a while now, and regular season used to feel a little bit more interesting as like a place to practice and to make sure that you were getting reps in on your offenses. But as I've kind of gravitated towards the higher end of Siege, it feels more like the time on global that people kind of relax. People will cleave more. They'll spend a little bit less time in the actual sieges being hyper serious. And of course, within guilds, this varies person to person. Some people still like to really focus. But me, for someone who has a lot going on outside the game, I really like to log in, get my hits done as fast as I can, and get out. And it just leads to these videos, I think, not being quite as interesting. It's not really a lot to talk about when I say, hey, we Lucian this defense. It's not really something that you should Lucian, but I did it and it worked out. Or here's a video of where I got trapped, and that's funny. So yeah, I just really haven't been as interested in making videos because of that. And then also, obviously, as I've been in more competitive guilds, the desire to kind of like keep the bruiser offenses that are very safe secret rather than talking about them with everyone. So I'm happy to like show a counter, how to pilot it, how to run it when it's something that's been in other videos or something that people are kind of aware of. But you're less likely to see Siege YouTubers that are in competitive guilds bringing out novel ideas to show to everyone, just because of the competitiveness that's still in the atmosphere has kind of turned a bit more secretive. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought about this video. If there's anything that you think could be interesting for content for Siege. Otherwise, I'll probably just keep doing a little bit every here and there, but not quite as consistent as I was before. But thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.